Raising Ben was very, very difficult. He had severe OCD. He was diagnosed with every label in the book by the time he was 10. He was reactive and he was difficult and he went into brain locks. I don't even know how we survived as a family. On the day he took his life, we found out that he had been writing an essay in school about his past life experience. I was considered a threat, a witch to the people around me because I was looking for alternatives. There's something that is occurring that is connected to some kind of karmic stronghold. And first you have to look at your patterns in the life that you're in. When he was 16, when Jacob was 16, in that life, I actually poisoned his father with rat poisoning. And we had a fight between us. And I literally opened my arms and said, "Go ahead, I'm so done." And he bludgeoned me to death to my throat. His first ritual was his throat to my hand. He had locked himself in his bedroom. He had put his bed up against the door. He had lighter fluid and matches, and he was threatening to kill himself. When I found him dead in my garage when he was 18, I literally just stood there and screamed, "This can't be right. He's been your teacher. You have been his. You have played this out very well. You're going to become a voice for change on behalf of kids like him. And it's going to be called Ben Speaks Louder Than Words." Finally heard him say the words, I forgive you.
Oh, wow. From a very cosmic perspective, do you feel like you know why Ben died?
And therapy does not often lead to healing. In between losing my mother and my son Benjamin, my two sisters died. And it has literally changed the trajectory of my life. Feelings aren't fact either. You know, just because you feel like you have to stay miserable to honor your child doesn't mean it's true.
How did you get through some of those messiest moments of grief? Hey, this is Em Hollis, and welcome to the Messy Truth of Transformation, where it's okay to be magical and messy. This isn't your typical personal growth podcast. Around here, we talk about the real stuff, the raw, the honest, the shadow work, the spirals, the breakthroughs, and the beautiful chaos of becoming who you were always meant to be. If you've ever felt alone on your healing and growth journey, or you wondered why it feels hard even when you're doing the work, you're not crazy, and you're definitely not alone. Let's dive into the messy truth of what it actually takes to transform your life. Today, I'm sitting down with Judy Giovangelo. She is a master healer and advanced grief recovery specialist, an author, and the founder of Ben Speaks, a nonprofit organization that provides positive channels of expression and empowerment for a whole person approach to wellness through clinical and holistic resources and education. This organization was formed after losing her 18-year-old son to suicide. In Judy's own words, "My family suffered greatly as a result of a mental illness that was not supported by our community and society. There were limited resources and outlets for our energetic, out-of-the-box, highly creative child. Our son Ben chose to take his life on April 16, 2009. He was just 18 years old. Ben was a creative, authentic, empathic, sensitive, highly intuitive young man and had a lot to share. Had he been given creative channels to direct his high level of energy and had adequate resources to manage his mental health, perhaps he would still be with us today. I have heard hundreds of stories from other families dealing with similar issues. We would like to create new and innovative solutions to give our children a positive outlet to express themselves and the tools to fully manifest their dreams, no matter what challenges they face." Let's dive into the messy truth with Judy. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Messy Truth of Transformation. I am I'm trying to find the words, honored, grateful, looking forward to, humbled by this conversation we're about to have. Welcome Judy to the show. Thank you for being here. Judy and I were just talking about, she was like, "How did we connect again? Like, how did we get on?" And I was telling her that I was doing these research calls, and I had a call with a woman that had lost a son to suicide. He was 20, and the heartbreak that she was sharing with me and the things that she was dealing with, it touched me so much that I was like, I need to have somebody on the podcast that has navigated this very messy experience and someone that's sort of gotten to the other side of it to see the gifts that perhaps were in it, because I know so many people can't possibly begin to imagine the gifts. So Judy is here to share with us. And normally, Judy, every place I start on the podcast is asking people to start from the very beginning, like the first 5 to 10 years of their life. But since we're
Hmm.
really focused on Ben, your son, in this conversation and all the Bens of the world,
Right.
I would love to start with the first 5 to 10 years of Ben's life. Can you talk us through what that was like?
Yeah. Benjamin was my middle child. And I have three. And my oldest son, Michael, my daughter, Jenna, Ben was sandwiched between them. And, he presented early on as a baby, really, with OCD.
Mm,
I had no idea as a young mom what that was. I just knew that there were these rituals that he was presenting with. And the first one was his baby hand to my throat. I mean, we could get into a really deep story about that because it years later led back through past life regression work to a past life with he and I, that
yeah.
led to his actual healing in his teens. But I don't know if that's the road you want to go down. But
Let's share it. If it
I
came
mean,
up, share it.
it's a big story, and it's in my book, The Phoenix Rising. It taps into it there. But, Ben and I came into this life as spirit beings with a contract. And the day he died, suicide at 18, his soul basically told me that we had a contract. So everything we went through in the years of raising Ben was very, very difficult. He had
Mm,
severe OCD. He was diagnosed with every label in the book by the time
mm.
he was 10. I call it
Wow.
the alphabet soup of labels because nobody
Wow.
really knew what was wrong with Ben, and
Right.
there wasn't anything really wrong with Ben also. And he had a lot of gifts. He had a lot of strengths. He had a lot of amazing things that he could have contributed to this planet. But the focus was never on that. It was always on what's broken about Ben, and
Mm,
he was reactive and he was difficult and he went into brain locks. And we went through years of like, I don't even know how we survived as a
mm,
family, the years of his severe episodes from the time he was born until we had a major shift when he was 13 and a half through past life regression and the awareness that this was energy that was coming forward from another time. And he and I together were able to heal that and clear that.
mm.
And it
Wow.
was very serendipitous and very, like, it felt crazy, insane, honestly.
Sure.
But everybody around us was able to, witness it. My mother, my sisters, my husband, my kids, even Benjamin, on the day he took his life, we found out that he had been writing an essay in school about his past life experience and how he had overcome, so much of what he had been just laden with as a young kid and a teenager, and
Wow.
so much of what he dealt with his mental health challenges had cleared.
Mm,
Not all of it, but yeah. And then
mm,
you flash forward to the day that he ended his life, and then
yeah.
it goes from there.
Well, let's go back. Let me start with this, Judy. So when those first 10 years, he's struggling with all of these things.
Mhm.
Number one, did you have a frame of reference for alternative forms of
Hmm.
therapy, or were you just sort of like lost in a sea of like, what do I do? And had you experienced yourself some of the same traits that Ben had that they were saying?
I am a Ben. I didn't have the severity of what he had, but I definitely didn't fit in. I was a fish out of water. I was moved from special school to special school.
Mm,
Nobody knew, there was no language for it back then. And so as I began the process of raising my children, it was in my late 20s, early 30s when was a very young mother that I had tapped into Reiki. And
mm,
I became a Reiki master by the time I was in my late 20s, early 30s. So I had my son, Michael, my oldest, who's 37 today, he calls me the OG, the original
ah,
gangster of this language that we hear today.
yeah,
Back in the days that I was raising my kids, I was considered a threat, a witch, really,
yeah,
to the people
sure.
around me because I was looking for alternatives to help support my son. And I became a yoga kids teacher. By the time my kids were young, when they were young, but my oldest was now in his late adolescent, early teens.
Mm,
And I had a studio called Diamonds in the Rough Yoga and Art
mm,
Studio. And
mm,
I, attracted all the people who were just in the very early stages of a holistic approach, a more open, more energetically aware approach to wellness. And
yeah.
so I'm I guess, again, the original
Mm.
gangster. It was something that just happened naturally as a result of having a kid that was so difficult. I was looking for anything that could help him. And,
Mm, mm,
therapy just didn't hit the mark. The therapist didn't even know how to help him. And then they started
mm,
to just laden him with medicine, of course. And so by the time he was in middle school, he was on 80 milligrams of Prozac,
mm,
Lamictal for anxiety, got
mm,
fat
mm,
from the medicines. His self esteem went in the tanker. We tried to homeschool him.
mm,
That was a disaster. We eventually
mm,
got him out to, we were a middle income family.
mm,
We would never be able to afford what we afforded back then today, but
mm.
we were able to scrape up enough money to put him into Sudbury Valley School, which was a really totally out of the box school. I called it
Wow.
lovingly his Harry Potter school,
I love
because
that.
literally you'd drop him off at the pearly gates and he would just go and play Foursquare all day until he was ready to start to learn again. It really unschooled him.
Yeah.
And then he eventually wanted to come back to the mainstream school,
Wow.
which I, of
Wow.
course, have regret about because, it led to
Sure.
his loss. But,
Sure. So,
here we are.
what was it like living with him, the first before the big breakthrough you said when he was 13? Like what were some of the things that he struggled with on a day-to-day basis?
He had severe brain locks. As an example, and this could happen at any time and often happened at least 2 or 3 times a week where we had some kind of major brain lock that he would go into. But one of them that is crazy striking is, he would get stuck on, you know, um, we're gonna go to Auntie's for the weekend, and we're gonna go straight to her house. We're gonna have lunch there. No, I want Burger King. Okay, now we're getting in the car. We're not having Burger King. We're going straight to Auntie's. My sister Lynn was in the van with us. So it was
Mm,
me, my sister, and my other two kids and Ben.
mm,
And a brain lock looked like Ben starting to now scream, I want Burger King, and really setting into I want Burger King
mm,
to the degree that he actually stood up and opened the car door going,
mm.
the slider door on the van going 65 miles an hour
Wow.
on 495,
Wow.
saying, I'm going to jump out if you don't get me Burger King. Like those were the
Wow.
kinds of things that would happen.
Wow.
From the time
Wow.
he was little until he had the shift with the past life,
Yeah.
these things were occurring on a regular basis.
And can
And, my
you
sister slammed the door closed and
Yeah.
said, "Go to the nearest police station." I mean, we had police, we had
Mm,
ambulances, we just it was insanity. He really,
mm.
really struggled. And we had no idea what to do, and the therapist had
Yeah.
no really idea how to help us.
And
And then when so
yeah, no, I was just gonna say if you could explain what a brain lock is to people listening that don't understand that.
yeah, so there's a doctor, I believe his name, is Michael Green. I might be getting his name wrong because 'cause it's been a
Mm,
long time since
mm,
then, but, he wrote a book, he was out of Mass General called The Explosive Child, and
mm.
he called it a vapor lock, and then there was somewhere in the book where he might have said something like brain lock, but it stuck with me as a
Yeah.
brain lock.
Mm,
And I probably was listening to other interviews from other doctors at the time, but basically what happens to the brain is that when someone with severe OCD like Ben had gets stuck on the idea of wanting something a particular way, their brain is almost like a car engine where,
mm.
when it's overheated and there's nothing you're going to do to get that engine to start.
Wow.
Same thing
Wow.
with a brain lock. There's nothing you're going to do to get him off that loop until he's able to, unplug. We had a big language in our home about the importance of learning to unplug.
Mm,
You had to completely unplug from him, and he would become very explosive. He was
mm,
very explosive at times,
mm, mm. How
almost
did
dangerous.
Yeah, how did you navigate that aspect of it? Like, the
By the grace of God,
actual
I would call the
Yeah.
police. I would call the police,
Mm, mm,
especially as he got older.
yeah.
Yeah, I've
And
had to
how
call the police on him on multiple occasions.
and how do they handle it, especially when they don't understand
He usually, what would happen is they would call an ambulance and they would get him in an ambulance. By the time he got to the hospital, now he had the time for his brain to calm down. And by
Mm,
the time he got there, he would appear like he was normal.
mm,
Yeah,
mm.
it was crazy. It was insanity.
So, Judy, how would your other children, his siblings, and your husband, like, how did you guys do this as a family? Because I can only imagine the stress it puts on the entire family, the sibling, your
It was
husband.
crazy. It was very hard. I mean, you think about just getting kids off to school, Ben could
Yeah.
go into a brain lock at any time. And so when he did, it was extremely disruptive and we would just do the best that we could. I mean, that's all we could do.
Wow.
There were
Wow.
times where you could, get him to, I mean, by the time he was in first grade, it started in kindergarten when he first started being dropped off at school. He had 9 rituals before I'd even be able to drop him
Wow.
off. So I'd be standing there with all the kids going in, getting in line with the teacher. And, Ben would be standing in front of me and he'd say, you know, high five, three, I'd have to high five him, elbow
Yeah.
bump, blink my eye. I mean, he'd have this whole ritual set and
Yeah.
I'd have to go through the whole thing.
Yeah.
And then his next thing would be, am I going to get poisoned? Am I going to die? No. Am I going to get poisoned? Am I going to die? No. And after we said that 4 or 5 times, I said, Ben, you have to go now. And he might go, or he
Mm.
might say, no, we have to start over again.
Yeah.
And, the teacher would just be like, I got to go. I got to go. I got to go.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
sometimes he'd get in a line and sometimes he wouldn't. Once he was in school, he was fine. So it
Mm.
was pretty clear that somehow whatever this was attached to his relationship with me.
Mm.
And, we went through years of this, but when we did get to the past life piece, we understood why that was so, because
Yeah.
it was really rooted in a past life and a clearing that needed to happen between him and me, which did actually ultimately happen. And
Wow.
after that happened, his life changed. He went
So,
from being very difficult to being one of my easiest kids till the day he took his
wow.
life. Yeah.
Wow. So this is, I would love to go down this thread a little bit because,
Hmm. Hmm.
a lot of us in the personal growth and the spiritual space talk about trauma leading to certain things, right? Trauma in the
Right.
childhood leading to certain things in adulthood.
Absolutely.
And it
Hmm.
sounds like with Ben, it was just like he came in with this
He did.
fierceness.
He
It
did.
sounds like just
He did.
very fierce spirit and soul. And
Here to heal.
yeah, and for somebody that doesn't understand this realm at all, thank God you were, open to all of it. Like, what do you say? What do you say to somebody that might be listening that has a child that's like exhibiting some of the same behavior and taking them to doctors, Western medical doctors that surely don't understand all of this? Like, what do you say to them to be able to navigate? Like, hey, it might be a past life thing that needs to be cleared.
Well, the first thing I would say to the adults in that are, dealing with this child, for them to start to look at and start to do the healing work on themselves. I mean, it really had to start with the parent because I was doing a ton of my own healing work throughout
Mm,
this process and
mm,
becoming more and more open to looking at the energetic strands, the karmic, strongholds that were on my own life and family. And I had a lot of support around that. I had 2 sisters who were alive at the time. They also passed within 5 years after losing my son. I
wow.
lost both of those sisters, and they were healers, um, early healers like me.
Wow.
And, we started to, you know, really delve into the energy aspect of what was occurring in my life. And it was a natural unfoldment because of the support that I had around that. And I just
Wow.
kept following along and trusting what
Mm,
was occurring,
mm,
to me as we went along. I had no idea. Honestly, it was just, I don't even know if today I could say to somebody, do this and then do this. Although I
yeah.
would say, first and foremost, there's something that is occurring that is connected to some kind of karmic stronghold.
Mm,
And first you have to look at your patterns in the life that you're in. That's what I would encourage people to do
yeah.
and see what those triggers are and what
Mm,
triggers you as a parent when that
mm,
child is behaving the way that they are, and start to
mm,
do the work around your own triggers
mm,
and start to neutralize those.
yeah.
Because the truth is that I mean, I don't even know what the truth is.
Yeah.
In my in my knowing, that past life experience felt very real.
Mm,
And I will never know for sure if that really
sure.
happened, right? I
Sure.
don't know if we actually were in past life together. But what I
Yeah.
do know is that the mind made up a story that
Yeah.
led to the healing,
Mm,
that led to us moving forward in our lives and away from whatever was happening with
wow.
him that
Wow.
had us so stuck.
So
Does that make
let's,
sense?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So let's go there. I would
And that
love
would
to
be through
hear.
hypnosis, that would be through, I love Joe Dispenza because Joe Dispenza, there's so many people out there today that are speaking to this work and saying, look, it's the neurology. You have to heal the neurology.
Yeah.
You have
Absolutely.
to look at the triggers.
Yeah.
You have to look at your energy centers, your chakras, your diseases in your body,
Yeah.
where the pain points are, and
Yeah.
really start to map it and then
Absolutely.
see what's happening from inside to externally.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and and when you're able to do that, now I did not know that that's what we were doing when this was
Mm.
happening. I was
Wow.
just searching for anything.
Wow.
And it
Wow.
was at a time when, there was more language. It was, Reiki was starting to rise up
Mm.
in Western
Uh,
medicine. And, that was the first place
yeah. Yeah.
was
Yeah.
Reiki and yoga. But the
Yeah.
parents have to be able to stay calm. I mean, you
Yeah.
have to be able to unplug from a kid like this and not take it personally. And if it is personalized, if you are finding that their behavior is causing you to be, hitting the ceiling in your reaction to them, then that's the first thing that has to happen. You have to learn
Mm.
how to address that first,
Yeah. Yeah. You're
because the kid
speaking
is just a
to
mirror. The kid is a
Yeah.
mirror.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're speaking to something I'm so passionate about, which is like conscious parenting, which I first heard from Dr. Shafali. I don't know if you've heard of her before and
I
her work.
have.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just using your children as mirrors for your growth. I mean, Joe Dispenza
absolutely.
talks about that. The fastest way to enlightenment is being a parent, right?
Totally.
That's where it starts. So I love that you're speaking to that. So what actually happened at 13? Like what was the experience of the past life regression? What happened? Where was he at pre that and what did it look like
So,
post that?
yeah, so, we were at the point where we were ready to, we didn't know, institutionalize him, have him not live in the home. How are we
Mm,
even going to do that? We didn't even know.
mm,
But, thankfully, through my sister Lynn, who was a spirit song teacher, she was
mm.
doing spirit song, with many women in the region, and
Wow.
she had, connected with a woman who was looking for a place to live, and she was a healer in her own right, and I wouldn't say her name today because she's asked me not to, but,
Mm.
we'll call her Sarah.
Okay.
I think in my book, I call her Sarah, and,
Okay.
she came to live with us, and she started to do healing work with Ben. And I basically said to Ben, he was homeschooling at the time. And I said to him, you know, you have to see her every day for I don't know how long, but you're going to spend an hour with Mary. And Mary, in one of her very first sessions with him, saw in his auric field, in his energy field, him as a young boy back in the 1600s on the same land that our home was in at the time.
Wow. Wow.
And she saw him having stabbed a soldier, a British soldier, to death. That's the first thing that she got when she started to work with him. From there, she said to me, I think we need to past life regress you,
Mm,
which led to me being regressed by her.
mm,
And that led to, so if you remember, told you that one of his very first ritual was his hand to my throat as an infant. And literally, I would
mm,
pull it away and it would go back. I would pull it away
mm,
and it would go back.
mm.
So, what I saw in that past life, she took me back into the past life, and what I saw was that I was a young woman. I was 16 years old. I was in England.
Mhm.
My husband was my father. He had inherited a castle. I know this sounds so out of the. It's so
No.
crazy. It's out of the
It's
box. Okay.
no, I love
Okay. So
it.
it's so crazy. So I would. My name was Sarah Spencer. My father was my current husband. He put me on a ship to the Americas with a guy named George Briggs.
Wow.
George Briggs was a neighbor, and my father thought he was giving me a better life because he was losing his castle. As soon as I got out of port, he locked me down onto the bow of the boat and basically took me as his slave bride.
Mm.
Um, I got to America. I was brought to Medway, Massachusetts, on the land that is would have back then been on the same land that my house is
Wow.
on Main Street in Medway,
Yeah.
Massachusetts,
Wow.
called Briggs Farm. So I
Wow.
was taken to Briggs Farm, and I was basically, beaten and in a drunken environment for all of my life from that day forward, um, in extreme abuse with this man. He impregnated me twice. I had two children. One was Jacob, that's Ben, and one was a little girl named Sarah. Sarah, I gave away to a teacher. I saw all this in the past life regression. It was
Wow.
wild. It was
Yeah.
amazing. It was
Yeah.
wild, scary,
Yeah.
amazing, wild,
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
And so when he was 16, when Jacob was 16, in that life, I actually poisoned his father with rat poisoning. Now, his father in that life, George Briggs, when I poisoned Ben's first ritual, verbally in this lifetime was, am I going to get poisoned? Am I going to die? And he literally said that,
Wow.
that statement, asked us that question, I would say at least 100,000 times in his short life. I mean, it was
Wow.
a main question on a
Yeah.
daily basis. There were
Yeah.
days where he would ask it 100 times.
Wow.
Even in school, schools would say that they didn't see a lot of this, but when it came to him eating in the lunchroom, he would always have to ask a teacher before he ate his food if he was going to get poisoned, if he was going to die. Now dad is out of the picture. Me and Jacob are continuing to live our lives. It's the rearing of the Revolutionary War.
Mm.
Um, there's a lot of burnings. I saw all of
Yeah.
that. There's just a lot of craziness going on.
Yeah.
And Jacob had gone out to what's called Choke Park. It's a little pond or a lake near our house. And he had run across a soldier and they got into a fight and he bludgeoned him to death with his knife. He came home from from killing this soldier, and he was completely covered in blood. And I was drunk. Sarah
Wow.
was drunk,
Yeah.
and we had a fight between us. And I literally opened my arms and said, "Go ahead, I'm so done." And he bludgeoned me to death to my throat. His first ritual was his throat to my hand. Now,
Wow.
now we have the information. I started to recognize that I was dealing with, a past life entity. So when Ben would go into his brain locks over the course of the next 6, maybe 8 months, when he would go into a brain lock, I would start to call out Jacob, and
Wow.
I would say, Ben, I need you to, get stronger. And so we kind of went through this process, and you could see Ben really fighting against this energy.
Mm.
And then
Mm.
there was the night that it was finally released. He had gone into a brain lock. I was home alone, and he had locked himself in his bedroom. He had put his bed up against the door. He had lighter fluid and matches,
Mm.
and he was threatening to kill himself.
Mm.
And he knew that he had killed his mother in that lifetime. Whether that
Wow.
was right or wrong, that information was privy to him. And again, we were doing this by the so we had no idea. We were dealing with
Sure.
such insanity,
Yeah.
and we had angels around him. We were doing it
Wow.
all,
Yeah.
and
And
he's
did
on
he
the other side.
feel this during the time? Like, is he like talking to you? Like, is he
Yeah,
like,
he
I,
he's on the other side of the door, and he's saying he's gonna kill himself, and I could see. Now I'm a medium. I've been a medium
Mhm.
since long before he, all during all of this. I
Yeah.
started to develop as a medium, and I was seeing my sister Lynn's husband, who had passed before, uh, about a year before, in on the other side in the room with him, and I said,
Mm.
"Larkin's in the room with you, Benjamin, and he's telling me to tell you that you need to forgive Jacob. You need
Wow.
to release Jacob. You need to send him to the light."
Wow.
And he's screaming, "I can't do it. I killed my mother." And I'm
Wow.
saying, "Ben, this was another time. This is
Yeah.
Jacob is here for forgiveness. You have to release him. You
Wow.
have to free him. Let him go." Finally
Wow.
heard him say the words, I forgive you. I send you to the light. And
Wow.
then, I don't know, maybe 5 minutes later, the door opens. He and I fall in a puddle on the floor, crying. My husband and the other 2 kids, I don't even remember where they were. They came home. We shared the story. We all cried as a family. And I'm
Mm.
gonna tell you that we never saw Jacob again. And Benjamin's
Oh.
life changed from that day forward.
Oh my gosh,
And
Judy.
when I found him dead in my garage
Mm.
when he was 18, I literally just stood there and screamed, "This can't be right. Like, why? Like, no, after everything we've been through, he's doing so good. Like, what the hell?" And,
Yeah.
of course, there's the insanity of that scene, but
Yeah.
we're thrust to the hospital. We go to the hospital. I asked to see my son. I'm the first person to see him after the event of finding him. He's
Mm.
laying, on the slab or the gurney or whatever in the hospital. And I walk in and I say to him, "I could punch you right now." I said it out
Mm.
loud, and
Mm.
his voice came back in my head, and he said, "Go ahead, mom, it won't hurt." And I said, "That's
Mm.
not funny." And then I
Mm.
saw his soul standing next to him, and
Wow.
his soul said, "All kidding aside, you played your role perfectly,
Mm.
and, he's been your teacher,
Mm.
you have been his, you've played this out very
Mm.
well, and,
Mm.
you're gonna become a voice for change on behalf of kids like him, and it's gonna be called Ben Speaks Louder Than Words."
Oh my
And here we
Lord.
are 17 years later.
Oh.
Right.
Wow. So
And he has guided me. I mean, I wrote a book called The Phoenix Rising: A Mother's
yeah.
Journey Through Life and Loss. The first 2 years after losing him, um, were incredibly painful
Mm,
and incredibly magical all at the same time.
mm, mm, mm.
I was profoundly supported by spirit
Yeah.
in the journey that led from the moment of his death till till today, really.
Wow. So between that, that moment of puddling on the floor and him forgiving Jacob and sending him to the light to 5 years later finding him, those years you shared where he actually improved so
Yeah,
much.
so much. He still had OCD.
Hmm.
He still had a lot of work to do. You know,
Hmm.
it
Hmm.
didn't completely. You don't just unravel
Yeah.
13 and a half years of
Of behavior, just
of
behavior
behavior.
patterns. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
he at the time, he had fallen behind in school.
Mm,
Again, we had homeschooled him. He was now back in school. He got
mm,
caught up academically. The day he took his life, he had gone from 80 milligrams of Prozac down to maybe it was 5 milligrams of Prozac, maybe 5 milligrams of
wow.
Lamictal. He'd grown tall and strong. He
Wow.
was engaged in working with a trainer. So he'd lost all the weight, and he had started to develop friendships. He was loved and adored by the girls, which was surprising to him. He didn't really
Hmm.
know what to do with that.
Yeah.
He was 5 years behind academically, and he had caught up.
Wow.
He had passed the MCAS.
Wow.
He had, decent support at the high school that he was in with the IEP and the special ed teachers, but the
Mm,
kids were bullies. They were brutal, the boys especially,
yeah.
and they
Yeah.
would really pick on Ben. And
Yeah.
he got comfortable in his own skin. He's
Yeah.
doing yoga, he was doing Reiki, he was doing massage.
Mm,
We were applying all of the holistic tools
mm,
to him, and
mm.
he was able to come off of the medicine by
Wow.
giving different medicine,
Yeah. Yeah.
holistic medicine
Yeah. Yeah.
instead of chemicals. And so we got to see the trajectory of that change, which
Wow.
led to the reason that Ben Speaks is doing what it's doing today,
Yeah.
which is being a
Absolutely.
voice for the holistic approach to wellness
Yeah.
and helping people understand that there are so many tools out there. Therapy is not all there is, and
Yeah.
therapy does not often lead to healing.
No. No, not
It
deep
really does
healing. I
not.
have found. No. No.
No.
So I want to ask you a really difficult question, Judy. What do
Mm.
you think happened on that day he decided he couldn't take it anymore? What do you
Well,
believe?
we know. He went to school. He started to use. He was seeing a therapist.
Hmm.
He started to use marijuana as a means to self cope. It was at the beginning of, marijuana is legal today. It's really
Hmm.
hard for me. That hurts my heart
Hmm.
because at the time, it had become decriminalized. He was 18 years old. His therapist knew that he was using marijuana to self cope, but he had smoked before he went into the school that day and left, half a joint and a pipe in his car, and
Hmm.
they smelled it on his jacket. He'd been invited to a prom by a beautiful girl. Ben had been ostracized his entire life, as you can imagine. I mean,
Sure.
he had a lot of difficulty. Kids didn't want anything to do with him or our
Yeah.
family. We as a
Yeah.
family were ostracized in the
Mm.
community. Everybody thought we were weird and I was a witch and like all this craziness,
And you're
right?
in Massachusetts, like where the
Yeah,
where
right.
the belly of the beast for all of that.
You
Yeah.
got it.
Wow.
And so, all of that was happening. And he went to school with the smell of marijuana on his jacket. He got sent to the office by the teacher who smelled it on him, the principal and the vice principal, who just never understood our family. They never understood him. They never supported him when, boys picked on him and bullied him and threw him on the ground, gave
Uh,
him a concussion, took ambulance rides from the ways kids. I mean, they always stuck up for the kids who fit the mold and the kids who didn't, and especially Ben, because he was way outside the mold. He was literally picked on by the officers and by the
mm,
by the principal, and yeah.
mm,
And
mm,
so yeah, so they sent him home. They took away the prom when they
mm,
caught him with the weed in his car,
mm,
and he wrote a letter to his family, and I could say in a fleeting moment of despair,
mm,
when the
mm.
pain was greater in that moment than the resource he had available to him in that moment, he ended his
Wow.
life.
Wow.
With
Wow.
a very loving note to his family saying, "I just can't do this anymore. It's too hard for me." And we also, you look back
Mm.
at some of the things that occurred leading
Sure.
up to that, just a week before he came home, because he was a high empath, and as
Mm.
healers, we know that these kids, that these Bens, they're high sensitive, high empath. That's probably a lot of the OCD too. It's
Mhm.
not just what happened in the past life, if that even really happened.
Yeah.
But whatever we went through created that change, that click, that shift in
Yeah.
his neurology that
Yeah.
allowed him to say, that's the past. I can let that go. All the
Mm.
bad behavior I've done up until this point, I can let that go.
Mm.
Pin it on
Mhm.
that. I don't
Mhm.
know.
Mhm.
We'll never
Mhm.
know. But he came home about a week before with a headache. He had gone to the nurse's office, but it turned out that they were watching Schindler's List in the classroom. And he came home. He was pacing in my kitchen and he was just
Mm.
saying, I hate this planet. I can't believe what
Mhm.
people do. They're
Mhm.
horrible to each other. Did you
Mhm.
know what happened back then? And he was completely out of his skin. He was so
Mm.
upset.
Mm.
He was this
Mm.
kid that, if you caught a fish at the pond at Chope Park and he went out, tried to take the fish off the hook, he'd be weeping.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was just
Yeah.
so sensitive.
Yeah.
Too
And that
sensitive.
and that's what you share. We'll get into the organization that you created. You call you call people who are of like the same characteristics Ben's, which I love. So I'd
Yeah,
love for
not to the
you to
degree that he
share.
was. Not to the
Yeah,
degree that
yeah.
he was.
I would love for
But
you to share what a Ben is.
Ben is a high empathic, sensitive, intuitive, creative, artistic, outside the box kid. And,
Mm.
I think we're becoming more aware that these kids exist. I mean, we're now in schools and talking to principals, and principals will say,
Wow.
that kid's a Ben or that kid's a Ben. People understand what
Wow.
it means because we've given language to it, who these Bens are. And they're
Wow.
boys and girls. They come in all shapes, all sizes, all demographics.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how they're raised, what their spiritual beliefs are, how much money they
Mm.
have. It doesn't matter. They
Mm.
live in all communities, and
Mm.
they are falling through the cracks in record numbers today, to
Mm.
suicide, to
Mm. Mm.
self-harm,
Yeah.
to addiction, and we
Yeah.
know
Yeah.
this, and we can see this across the board.
So
This
how
is epidemic
quickly
at this point.
yeah, how quickly were you well, first, how did you move through the first couple years after that, and how quickly were you able to create the organization Ben Speaks
It was
after
born
his
that
death?
day, and I was
Wow.
part of it. I was part of a, networking group of women called the Dream Factory Community at the time.
Mhm.
There were women inside of that organization that helped me to become a 501(c)(3) within 1 year. So,
Wow.
in 2010, early 2010, not even a full year, we were a 501(c)(3) public charity. We started doing events. The first, Ben channeled to me in the beginning. He said, "Use the acronym CARE." CARE. We, as an organization, are going to do two things. We're going to be providing complementary alternative resources and education for a whole person approach to wellness, and we are going to create alternative resources for how kids express themselves. So, we don't use that language in the organization anymore. We still are saying the same thing, but not with the acronym of CARE, which
Yeah.
we were in the early days.
Yeah.
I can tell you that I um, spent the next 4 to 5 years like working my butt off
Mm. Mm.
with Ben Speaks. We did a concert every year for the
Wow.
expressive arts. We had candle lighting at the end of the first half of every concert for all the people who had lost kids. And then it would move through the emotions of grief and loss and end on a high note, kumbaya.
Mm.
We had kids come and perform from all over Metro West. These concerts were phenomenal. People loved them. They were
Mm.
very helpful for healing for those who had lost kids. They brought people together in community. They
Wow.
brought the arts out. We
Wow.
loved them. My mother ended up dying on the 5-year anniversary of the fifth annual concert out of the
Yeah.
blue, and I shut the concerts down after that.
Wow.
And in between losing my mother and my son Benjamin, my two sisters died. One to cancer, and the other to a 1 in a million disease called CJD, which is
Oh.
the human variation of mad cow.
Oh
And
my
so
lord.
that was even more karma to unpack for our family. But today, I'm doing phenomenal,
Oh,
believe it or not,
yeah. Yeah.
because 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 of healing work, and most importantly, because of the grief work that I'm
Mm.
trained in
Mm.
today.
Yeah, yeah, and that's where I would love to head next is
Yeah,
obviously grief has touched you in ways
unbelievable.
most will never even I can't comprehend.
No,
How did you get through some of those messiest moments of grief?
through Ben Speaks, through the mission. I would say, and
Mhm.
through my ability to communicate with his soul,
Mm,
and my deep awareness and profound wisdom that had been bestowed upon me through the whole journey.
mm, mm,
Knowing what I knew,
mm.
because I know that that we're spiritual beings,
Yeah,
and that we're in these bodies having a human experience. We're
yeah,
not the opposite, which is what most people think.
yeah.
And I had a lot of training. I mean, I was a yoga teacher. I meditation teacher. I'm trained in the chakras, and all of this occurred during the years of raising him and then losing him.
Wow.
And I became a hypnotherapist after he died because one of my dear colleagues and friends took me into hypnosis to heal my body of post traumatic
Mm,
stress. And
mm,
I literally came out
mm,
of that healing after my son downloaded me in that meditation with his
mm,
divine white light,
mm.
and the PTSD was gone. And
Wow,
so, I delved into the healing arts even more, and
wow.
continued to use those modalities. And then when I got trained in grief recovery, I realized that I actually had the mission had become what in grief recovery is called a STIRB. It's a short term energy release behavior, but it was
Mm,
a positive one.
mm,
But it definitely prevented me from, you know, I glazed over. I guess I put icing on top of some of the mud cake of the loss
mm,
through the mission.
mm,
And once
mhm,
I became trained in grief recovery at the height of COVID, when
mm.
my only living sister's husband died to suicide, um, yeah, so
Wow.
the dying didn't stop until Kevin. We haven't had any major loss since then. So COVID hit, my healing center shut down. Kevin died to suicide. I had to support my sister through her loss to her husband to suicide, and I got trained in grief recovery. And I can tell you the shifts that have occurred in my life since then and doing that
Yeah,
work.
yeah.
I've done 20 pieces of completion work through grief recovery,
Wow.
and it has literally changed the trajectory of my life.
Wow. Wow. So is Ben Speaks still active and engaged and as an
Yes.
organization? Yeah, I would
Yes.
love to hear what you guys are doing within that organization.
So, so we went from the concerts, COVID hit, then we did this thing called Art of Emotion for 2 years where we went to schools and they had kids submit their art. That didn't last long because of COVID. Because when COVID hit, everybody, all nonprofits really struggled. Came out of COVID, still tick-tocking along. We've been very fortunate to have, some pretty big, inserts of money that came out of the blue,
Mm,
again,
mhm,
spirit-led.
mm.
One was the, Yogathon at Gillette Stadium that brought in 68,000 for us.
Wow.
I was a hero among us with the Boston Celtics. I was the Be the Change winner in the state of Massachusetts. That didn't come with money, but it came with awareness.
Yeah.
And I was, honored by Myra Kraft. $10,000 came through the New England Patriots.
Oh
And
my
then
gosh.
3 years ago, 4 years ago now, we were almost out of money, and we got an insurgence of money from a golf tournament through Blue Cross Blue Shield. It's a
Wow,
one and done, unfortunately, but it was 89 grand. And,
wow.
right around that time, Ben's trainer, remember I talked about how he had a
Mhm,
trainer
mhm.
after his past life stuff? His
Yeah.
name's Jason Shea, and Jason Shea is the, wellness coordinator for the state of Massachusetts, has been for the past many years, I would say 20 years now, bringing wellness programming to first responders, municipal police in
Wow,
Massachusetts. He
wow.
called me out of the blue and said that Ben came to him in a dream and he wanted him to tell me to start Ben's challenge. Now, during these years, I had also been a speaker in schools. I created a program called The Power of Choice, and I'd get hired to go into schools through Ben Speaks. And, the basic feedback was that it was super inspirational. A little bit scary for some schools to have me because it's, on the back
I
of
w
suicide. So they
Yeah,
stay away from it. So, I've probably spoken 100 schools or more.
yeah, yeah,
But then after COVID, it had kind of died out. We didn't know what we were going to
yeah.
do next. And Jason came to me and said, he wants you to start Ben's challenge. So we took the power of choice, added Ben's challenge. We've created 8 wellness challenges. Jason Shea is now co-speaking with me. We've
Mm,
spoken in a few schools
mm,
with Ben's challenge. We just, last year, we were in Bellingham Middle School with Ben's challenge.
mm,
That went interesting. It's challenging at a middle school level. And then we
yeah.
just completed with Milford High School.
Oh my
We got
Lord.
into Milford High School. We created a leadership team there through the principal there.
Wow.
We led them through 8 wellness challenges, and they just completed with us. We have 4 schools that are interested in
Wow.
having Ben's challenge in their school. And yeah, so here we are, and it's a lot. It's a lot of work. I'm a healer, grief recovery specialist,
On
and
top of all
I'm
that.
right, and I'm
Yeah.
leading,
Yeah.
leading this
Wow.
organization.
Oh my Lord.
Spirit, God, the universe continues to just give us what we need.
Mm.
And in the landscape of the world that we're in today, it's not easy
No.
because
No.
there's, a lot of challenges. So
And we were talking about earlier before we hit record, as you shared, it's really an epidemic with boys. So
it
I would
is.
love to hear the research and just firsthand what you've seen and why you believe this is happening more often with boys and suicide.
So the other piece of what Ben Speaks does is we receive grant funding from a beautiful organization called the Parmenter Foundation,
Mm,
and they're out of Sudbury, Mass. And they fund us to run grief recovery. That I'm trained in the grief recovery method for grieving mamas, and they also
mm,
fund us to do sound baths every quarter.
mm.
We do
Wow.
it in a studio in Uxbridge, and we have Reiki healers that come in for the mamas and their
Mhm.
families. And in fact, we are having our quarterly this coming Saturday. And, so I've had the honor and the privilege of working with a lot of moms,
Mm,
obviously. And I also, being a grief counselor, both privately and through Ben Speaks, I have a Facebook page called Mothers Who Struggle After the Loss of a Child, to which within 2 months of starting that Facebook page, I had over 5,000 mothers on
wow.
that page.
Wow.
Mm. And the majority of them have lost kids to either to some form of self-harm, murder, suicide. And yeah, it's heartbreaking. In
Mm,
Metro West alone, the last iteration of Ben Speaks Grief Recovery, I had 4 mothers who had lost boys to suicide.
mm.
I just meet them every day. I know this. I before I even got trained in grief recovery, I had a healing studio, and I invited mothers to come just because I was doing energy work with them and mediumship. And 10
Yeah.
moms showed up, and 9 of those mothers, this is before COVID, um, had lost boys to suicide, 9 of them in Metro West. I mean, we don't talk about it. I
No.
don't get it. I don't know
Yeah.
why we keep shoving this under the rug. Nobody
Yeah.
wants to talk about it. And I think with boys that it's directly rooted to the fact that they're, expected to be strong and to present in a particular very masculine kind of way. I've had guidance from angels, spirit, whatever,
Mm.
that, the kids that are coming in today are coming in at a very different vibrational frequency. And
Yeah.
that's purposeful on the side of spirit, but the human beings are not getting the message, and so we really have to create language and
Yeah.
create opportunity for people to
Yeah.
understand. So when you ask me, if we go back to what you first asked me, now that we have more context, you
Yeah.
know, it comes back to doing the work. The
Mhm.
adults have to do the work. The
That's
adults
right.
have to do the work, and
That's right.
not label your kids as broken or or
That's right.
or OCD, ADD,
Yeah.
ADHD. I mean, it's craziness.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I'm so curious as you go into these schools and you present this information and these challenges and these things your organization is doing, are you as I guess you could say woo woo or metaphysical or out there with the things that you're teaching, or is it
No.
do you have to keep it very because of being able to present it in schools?
Yeah, absolutely. The
Yeah.
challenges are bringing kids back to the basics, which they're falling away from the basics, just the basics.
Wow.
Move your body. You got to move your body.
Wow.
You got to
Yeah.
raise your energy just
Yeah.
by moving.
Yeah.
That's vibration, right? So
Yeah.
we don't come out and say you got to raise your vibration,
Right.
but we
Right.
say you got to move your body. And here's
Yeah.
why. And Jason's a science guy. He brings
Yeah.
wellness programming through science, so
Yeah.
he's able to help them understand the science behind that
Yeah.
the body is energy, and we
Yeah.
have to keep our energy up. So
Yeah.
so move your body. It's you are what you eat,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
that's also mindset, what you eat,
Yeah.
what you believe in your own
Yeah.
mind, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Unplug,
Yeah.
getting them
Yeah.
off this
Yeah.
technology. That's a big
Yeah.
task, right? That's going to
Yeah.
be really hard.
Absolutely.
And now
Yeah.
we've got AI and all this, and
So
schools
much.
are wired for Bluetooth and internet and
Yeah.
and they
Yeah.
on their phones 24/7. So unplug is one. The power of water, the importance of hydrating your body.
Yeah.
So many
Yeah.
kids are dehydrated. They're
Yeah.
not eating healthy food and they're not moving their bodies. They're sedentary. They're on their
Yeah.
computers all day long.
Yeah.
Really back to basics. Change your channel.
Yeah.
Stand tall.
Yeah.
Your body posturing really matters,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I mean, this is like the basics for
Yeah.
adults, like all of us,
Yep.
really,
And
really.
the last
And
two are random acts of kindness and gratitude.
simple. I mean,
Yeah.
just very simple. And are
Yeah.
you finding that these schools are open to these conversations and want to have these conversations with the kids and provide these resources?
I think there's a lot of schools that are starting to open up to it. I mean,
Yeah.
the school that we just work with, Milford, it was overall positive. I think that they expected more from their kids than what they got because kids
Mm,
are, they're patterned into this
mm,
and they're very
mhm.
focused on the landscape that they're in. And
Yeah.
so, I know when I was a kid, if an adult said to me, "This is going to help you,"
Mm,
it wasn't until later that I actually adopted that into my own life. We're
yeah.
planting seeds.
It's
And
beautiful.
that's all we can do. And we're looking to leadership. We do this thing
Mm,
called front of the arrow. Do you want to be the front of the arrow? And
mm,
so there are the kids that are within these systems that really want to better their lives. They really want to move their lives forward. They want to go to a good college or whatever it
yeah.
happens to be. And
Yeah.
so those are the kids we look for within their system to
Yeah.
cultivate as leaders to then shape these wellness challenges into their school over an 8-week period of time. And so
Wow.
they do them one at a time. We make it clear to them that they all come together. It's not
Mm,
just do this and then just do this and then just do this.
yeah.
Make all 8 of these your practices in
Yeah.
life, and you will live a much richer life, much
Yeah.
healthier,
Yeah.
stable, connected life. Mm.
Absolutely. And so kind of back to the beginning where I said why I really wanted to do this podcast. I was thinking of this woman in mind, and I was sharing with you before we hit record that she was really struggling with just letting go of the grief because she felt like it would mean she's dishonoring her son or just moving
Mhm.
on. And so I would love to hear you speak on that in particular, parents who have lost children that feel like it sounds like to me not moving on, but moving past it. It's almost like they feel like
I think the
they're
important
letting go of that.
language, rather
Yeah.
than moving on or moving past,
Yeah.
you never get over it, you never get past it. You
Yeah.
have to go through it,
Yeah.
and you have to be ready. I mean, you lose a child, you are on the floor. There is just no doubt about that. You're gonna be so devastated, and people around you love you and they want you to stand up, move forward, move on. They have all the language. It's all inappropriate language, but they don't
Mm,
know it. They're
mm,
doing the best they can. As a griever, you're reacting to them, wanting you to be better
yeah.
and, making them wrong. And
Yeah.
I really like to speak to both sides and say, people who are doing that love you. They're doing it because they
Mhm,
love you. They
mm,
don't know what to say. We haven't trained
mm,
people well in this country. It's coming more and more. There's some
yeah.
great grief people out there. David
Yeah.
Kessler is one of them. I'm growing into one of them
Yeah.
naturally through my own experience and who I work with as mothers as my niche. But, you know, um, for grievers to understand that people just are trying to help them and maybe learning how to give them better language is certainly not in a position to do that in early grief. David Kessler says that it takes a good 5 years for most people um,
Mm,
to even, start to move out of early grief.
wow.
And the reminder that our capacity for, as we go through that process, to hold space for the devastation, the sadness,
Mm,
the hurt, the disappointment, the resentment, all the things that are those deep guttural
yeah.
emotional feelings that we feel during this part of the journey. That we also, when we're ready, can be the phoenix that rises from the ashes and be able to hold space and create a bigger container and hold space for compassion and love
Mm,
and moving through it. When you're in early grief up to that first 5 years, it does feel like it's a dishonor to your child to move out of
mm,
the grief. The grief is almost like a scarlet letter or
a
it's like
connection.
it's a way to
Yeah.
connect. And
Yeah.
if I let that go, I'm letting him go or
Mm,
letting her go.
mm,
And it feels that way. And so it's
mm,
understandable. So it's just
mm,
really honoring with a griever where they are and saying, yeah,
yeah.
I get it. I remember being there.
Yeah.
And,
And
it's
it's
okay that
okay.
it's okay that
It's
you're there,
yeah,
and
yeah,
that you can, when you're ready,
when you're
when
ready.
you're ready, you
Yeah.
can, and then the question is always, and what do you think they would want?
Mhm,
Would they want you to,
mhm,
be miserable for the rest of your life?
mm.
You know, in their name, they wouldn't,
Yeah,
as a mother, we know that, you
yeah,
know?
yeah. Two things I wanna take from that. Number 1, do you I love that you're I love that you the messy truth of transformation is about, like, when you're in the midst of all the messy like, all those experience all those emotions that it doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong, like, it's
Mm,
part of the process. That is, we're trying to avoid all the time, constantly bypass almost being human,
right?
instead of just going, "No, this is part of being human. This
It
is the
is.
messy experience,"
It
and to
is.
honor that, and I love that you're coming from that space with these moms,
You have
especially as
to
somebody
feel
who's
it.
been there. Yeah.
You have to feel it, you
Yeah.
know? Feelings aren't fact either, just because
Mm.
you feel like you have to stay miserable to honor your child doesn't mean it's true.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not truth, it's a
Yeah.
feeling.
It's yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
feeling, and you
Yeah.
honor the feeling. It's okay that you feel that way. Yeah,
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
It makes sense that you do.
Do you feel like you are now the phoenix that has risen from the ashes?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yes.
It
Yes.
it appears
And
it appears so.
yes, yes, I have. I mean, I've been through a lot, and
Yeah.
my body's getting older. I'm 65 this past December, and I'm tired. I wish I could retire, but I
Yeah.
have this big mission in front of me, and I've
Wow.
been doing it for 17 years. But it is
Wow.
so deep in my core and in my heart
Yeah.
that I won't give it up until I know that it's the time for me to do so, and I know it's not the time right now. So,
Yeah.
I have some of my own human challenges, of course.
Sure. Sure.
And
Sure.
work with mothers or anybody that I'm doing healing work with, I'm very transparent about that.
Yeah.
This has not been an easy journey. I've had a
Yeah.
lot of dis-ease in my heart, in
Mm.
my body at different
Mm.
times, and been able to heal it,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
that's just a process.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just a process, like you said.
From a
Yeah.
very cosmic perspective, do you feel like you know why Ben died?
For this purpose.
Mm. Wow.
His soul told me that we had a
Wow.
contract, and I believe that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
believe that we had a contract. It made sense to me at the time because it was like,
Yeah.
well, that explains why a good-hearted, loving mom that just did the best she could with her kids to give them a better life than what she had in her own life. Not that my parents were, the worst, or I
Sure.
didn't come from extraordinary trauma. I had trauma, but
Sure.
not, they certainly didn't intend for that. And, I wanted to be a, loving, supporting
Mm.
mother. And I was faced with this, really difficult kid that made me feel like, what's wrong with me? What's
Sure.
wrong with us? We're a broken family, to
Mm.
transmuting that,
Mm.
transferring. What's your word? You used a word,
Transcending?
transcending the messy.
Oh, yeah.
I was called
Yeah.
to transcend
Yeah.
the messy.
Wow.
That's what my soul came to do. And I know that. Like, I know that my soul is really ruling this whole thing.
Wow.
And the human part of me can't screw it up, but certainly has made a lot of attempts to.
That messy human part of us. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm a messy human. I
Yeah.
think to be human is messy.
Yeah.
And
I love that. I love
yeah,
that. So how's your husband doing? How's your kids doing? Like, how are you guys doing as a family unit now?
well, I divorced my husband
Mm.
within I don't really want to, talk too much about him and
Sure.
our relationship, because that would be against his privacy, and I wouldn't want to do that. But
Sure.
he and I have done, again, that grief work really helped me to clear a lot of
Mm.
the slate with me and my
Sure.
ex, and my kid's dad, and
Yeah.
we work very well together today to
That's
co-parent
awesome.
our adult children.
Yeah.
My daughter was only 16, and she found her brother with me, and she went into 10 years of drinking and almost dying multiple times.
Mm.
She is today 5 years sober.
Oh, wow.
My son Michael is 37. He's the president of the nonprofit. We've all
Oh,
been through a lot.
wow.
Just,
Yeah.
between losing Ben,
Yeah.
my two sisters, my mother, their parents' marriage, my brother in law, and other people too, over that 10-year trajectory. My kids have been through a lot. My daughter Jenna was at a time in our culture when a lot of kids were dying. She's lost, I don't know, 7 to 10 friends to
Wow.
addiction.
Wow.
Her brother's a little older than her, so it didn't
Yeah.
start in his yet.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
was Ben's age group, Jenna's age group. It seems to be starting to take a curve. But my kids, my Benny and Jenna were right in it. And so Jenna has been through the ringer, and I'm so, so proud of her.
Mm,
She has severe PTSD. She struggles, but she's an amazing soul. And I know that she's going to
mm,
continue to work her way through it.
mm, mm.
And I'm very, very proud of my children, and I'm proud of my relationship with my ex-husband. We're good
Yeah.
friends. He
It's
supports the
amazing.
work that we do.
It's
He
amazing.
comes to things that, we get. I
Yeah.
get invited to his sister's house for
Yeah.
they're my
I
family.
love that.
We're
I love
family.
that, Judy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It gives such a great example of how that can look instead of
Yeah.
the way that it can go,
You
but
work through
another way.
if you work through it, it can work,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
everybody wants to just say, "You're not a good vibe for me.
Yeah.
You're causing me you're unhealthy, your
Yeah.
trauma, your
Yeah.
drama."
Yeah.
You know what? You're family, and if you're
Yeah.
family, let's figure it out because you're
Mm.
just gonna spin around this thing again.
Yeah, right.
So, you know what I mean? Like, you could try to
Yeah.
avoid all the mess, but if
Yeah.
you avoid the mess, you're just gonna face
Coming
it
right
again
back.
somewhere else.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
luck.
So what do you say to parents out there that have bens that are struggling and don't know what to do and Western medicine's not giving them an answer and they're sort of throwing their hands in the air like you were? What message do you have for those parents?
Listen to them. Love them as they are. Don't try to stuff them in the box. Don't try to change
Mm,
them. They're not broken.
Mm,
Kids are not broken.
yeah.
They might need some support. They need different tools. They need a
Yeah.
different toolbox than the average Joe, than the kid that fits the mainstream model.
Yeah.
Therapy does work for some people, but it's not for everyone. It's like,
Yeah.
we have 36 or I don't know, hundreds of flavors of ice cream.
Yeah.
Why do we get stuck on one way to heal, or one way to evolve, or one way to become a better aspect of who you are in the world? I think the biggest and most important thing is to see your children for who they are, see their gifts, help them to extract their gifts, focus on their gifts. Don't label them. If they do have OCD, okay, they have this thing called OCD, but they are so many other things. Ben wore the label of OCD. That
Mm,
became his everything. I'm
mm,
OCD. I'm OCD. He signed his cards to me, his OCD boy. I mean,
Wow.
so everything is energy, everything is vibration, everything's frequency. And if that's the frequency in which you're living in, that's what's going to, you know this, right? So, it, you know, love is the key.
mm,
Um, love is the key. Kindness is the key.
Yeah.
Um, get them to healers, do some research,
Yeah.
reach out to Ben Speaks. Happy to have a phone call with anybody,
Yeah.
seriously.
Yeah. Yeah.
And do your own work around your own grief and your own loss and your own trauma if you have it.
Yeah.
If your kid's being bullied and you're triggered by that, do the work
Yeah. Yeah.
because you're not going to change it for them.
Right. Right.
And if you
Right.
change it in you, it'll change for them.
That's right. I love I
Yeah.
love I love everything that you're sharing today, Judy. Is there anything else that's on your heart that you would like to say before we sort of get to wrapping this up?
I don't think so. Support our organization. That's one of the
Yeah.
hardest things is that, you got to make it rain on an organization like this. To make it rain for 17 years, it's been a lot. And
Wow.
I'm one person, and people don't want to give money to this. I don't know why, but they don't.
Yeah.
We don't have a
Yeah.
million donors. We just don't.
Yeah.
People love
Yeah.
to give to cancer. It's
Yeah.
sexy. It's sexy to give to
Yes.
cancer. It's sexy
Yes.
to give to, you know, when there's an earthquake, and to rebuild houses and all that good stuff. When it comes to mental health and suicide, and people do give to suicide prevention organizations, which is great. But are we really preventing suicide by
Yeah.
doing that?
Yeah.
Um, you know, we're preventing suicide by empowering our youth to love themselves from the inside out.
mm,
That's when
mm.
we're going to create the change, and to love
Absolutely.
each other as they are.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
I will make sure to leave all the links down there to
Yeah.
help support your organization for sure.
And
So I
if you're
always
local, come to our comedy show.
Oh, great.
That's March 21st.
That's
We
awesome.
do a program called a yearly fundraiser comedy show called Laughter is the Best Medicine.
Oh
And
God, it
and
so is.
suicide is no joke.
That is really good.
It's just
Wow. Wow. Wow.
yeah.
So I always wrap this up with 3 questions that I ask
Okay.
every guest that I have. Number 1, what is the best piece of advice you have ever received?
From my mother, do
Mm.
everything in moderation.
Oh my gosh. I so have heard that so many times in my life, and it's so what I speak to in my own work so much. Balance. I talk about balance a lot, but basically it goes back to that.
Absolutely. Everything in moderation.
Yeah. Love
If you
that.
do things moderately, it won't kill you.
Yeah. God, I love that. It's funny. I've never heard anyone else say that before. Number 2, what is the worst piece of advice you've ever received?
Gosh, I don't know. I guess the worst message, maybe not advice that I've received is, that you're not good enough.
Mm, mm,
You know,
yeah.
there's
That's a
something wrong with you that you don't
There's something
fit.
wrong
I
with
mean, that
you.
was the
Yeah.
early message that I received,
Yeah.
not through anyone's intention. And so many of us do receive that message today.
Yeah.
And so that
It's
comes through a lot of opinions,
Yeah. Yeah.
projected opinions.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's the core. I mean, it's that I'm very vocal about one of my core beliefs is there's something wrong with me. And at 15 and 16, I attempted to leave this earth because I was a
Did you?
Ben and
Yeah,
struggled
you
throughout my
get
whole
this.
childhood. Oh, I get
You
it.
get
I
this.
get it.
Yeah.
I get it very, very, very well, and went through a lot of really difficult, challenging moments in my life.
Mm,
But luckily 10 years ago was able to get to the other side and change everything and live the life I do now. So I understand deeply, which is why I'm so passionate about sharing stories like this because it, if people listen to this and they understand they're not alone and that
exactly.
nothing's wrong with them
No.
and that this is part of it, it can change the trajectory
Yeah.
of so many people's lives. So,
Absolutely, and that life is messy. And I'm
life
so glad you're here and doing
Thank
this
you,
work.
Judy.
Really,
Thank
really
you. You as
honored
well.
to be on this
Thank
podcast with you. It really means a lot
thank
to
you.
me.
Thank you. But vice versa. Same, same,
Thank
same, same.
you.
So last question.
Yeah.
If you could go back to one of the deepest, most messiest moments in your life, whatever moment that was, what would you say now as the person you are now to that version of yourself in that moment?
Mm. I love you.
Mm. Mm.
I love you. You're enough. You deserve to be here.
Mm.
It's all going to be okay.
Mm.
It's all going to be okay.
Mm.
There's nothing wrong. Even the death of Ben,
Wow.
there was nothing wrong.
Wow.
There was nothing wrong. It was completely on purpose.
Wow. That's
And
pretty
good can come.
profound.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good
It's
can
so
come.
simple and so, so simple and so profound at
It
the
is.
same
I mean,
time.
it makes me crazy sometimes because people, you know, we're so afraid of death. We're so afraid of dying. And yet every
Yes.
one of us are going to go. I mean, it's,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
kids die every day. I mean, I'm a Valoma. I'm a mother who has lost a child. It's not the natural order. And
Yeah.
yet there are millions of us worldwide who have lost
Yeah.
children.
Yeah.
It's not, it's not the natural order. And yet it happens every day. So we
Yeah.
have to learn how to become better grievers,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
Absolutely. My husband and I were literally just having this conversation last night about the tendency, yeah, to not talk about death, even though none of us are getting out of this alive. And number
Exactly.
two, to hold on to life at all costs, no matter what. It's yeah. He's taught me how to be so much more comfortable with death and dying and all of
Awesome.
that. He's like, what if it's just like you won the lottery ticket? Like what if that's what it is? I'm like, yeah,
Taking
different
off an
perspective.
old leather shoe that you can't wait
Yeah,
to get off your
that's
foot.
right.
It's like,
That's right.
"Wah!" You know? I mean, the
Yeah.
journey with Ben has been extraordinary. I mean, he's
Wow.
a tremendous soul. I mean, there's so much more I could
Mm.
tell you,
Mm.
about
Mm.
the messaging that I've received, the
Yeah.
channeling of Archangel Metatron. I mean, it's just
Well,
There's
we have
so
to do a
much.
number 2. I said we have
Yeah.
to do a number 2 and dive into like the really, really woo-woo stuff.
Yeah.
Let's do that.
All
Let's
right,
do a
let's
part
do that.
2.
I mean, you got me onto
Awesome.
the deep stuff that I never talk about the past life stuff because,
I love it.
people will judge it. They'll think it's crazy
Totally.
and it makes no
Totally.
sense. And okay,
Yeah.
sure, lady.
Yeah.
So you can't lead, you really can't lead with that, especially with a
Yeah.
nonprofit organization in a
Yeah.
world that
Yeah. Yeah.
is, so torn right now. And
Yeah.
yeah, but
But
it's
yet it was
okay.
the
It's all
thing
good.
that shifted you. That's why it's so important because it's like
It
these
is
people
so
that are out
important.
there that don't know that.
Mm.
And yet look what happened, the result of that. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll go with it if it comes. I trust the
Awesome.
process.
Awesome. Well, thank
Spirit
you,
led through
Judy,
you.
so, so, so much for being here, giving us your time. I so appreciate all the work that you're doing. I'll put the links for everything below
Thank you.
and encourage, yes, for people to reach out and donate and do all the things they can because you're making a
Awesome.
huge difference. You and Ben.
Awesome. Thank you very
Yeah.
much. Yes, we are.
All right,
Yes, we
everybody.
are.
That is a wrap. We will see you on the next episode.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Hey
Appreciate
guys,
it.
thanks for listening to another episode. If this episode resonated in any way, I would love for you to subscribe, leave a review, or share it with somebody who's in the thick of it too. If you want more behind the scenes or you want tools to support you along your journey of messiness, come hang out with me over on Instagram at mhollis_thesage. But most importantly, just remember the mess is part of the magic.